Okay, so I'm back again for a second visit, second chat with Helen Campbell, and today we are going to focus more on how she can actually help teachers with their emotional intelligence. Hi, Helen, again.
Hi, Helen.
So, my understanding of your emotional intelligence training is that you can help people to understand their emotions and not be ruled by them in a detrimental way. Which should hopefully help to protect their mental health and prevent them from getting to breaking point. Would that be a reasonable summary?
Yes. The emotion, basically, when I'm talking about emotion, we're not talking hearts and flowers.
No.
We're talking energy. We're talking your passion, your energy, your drive, and how you manage that. A person who doesn't have control of their drive states is highly erratic, highly reactive, and it is definitely shouldn't be in teaching. In teaching, you do need to be completely in control of yourself. You need to have personal resilience and resourcefulness. And if you don't have those things, then you really are at risk in teaching. Also a risk to others. You know, we have a professional responsibility to do no harm, as well as to do our best for ourselves as well as others.
Yeah, I think we've all had those colleagues who really have been pushed to the limit and takes very little for them to, you know, probably been quite calm and measured through most of their career, but because of the pressure that the profession and we put on ourselves, get to the point where they've got no emotional bandwidth to maintain that calmness, and it takes very little to just set them off in a way that is probably would normally be uncharacteristic of them.
Yes, quite. And there are children who will look out and notice that, and who will play with that.
Push that button.
That button.
So I think there is probably three emotional states or mental health states that teachers find themselves in at some point in their career, possibly the end of their career, possibly the middle of their career, where you could help them, so that you can help them to be in control of their emotions so they don't end up at that point where they're going to break. If they are broken, when I talk about broken, I mean, you know, burnt out, possibly mental health problems, which seems to be quite a recurring theme I'm coming across. So at the point where they need to either leave teaching, but then need to learn how to control their emotions to be able to develop a new life, or they just need a break from teaching. But actually, I mean, not everybody who gets to the point where they're burnt out and probably taking time off ill, not all of those people want to leave teaching. Some do want to go back in once they're better, fixed, more, and go through to retirement. I think, you know, certainly when I started teaching, I thought I would be there to retirement. That's not what happened. And when I left, I didn't want to go back in. But some people do. But they want to go back in well and stay well for the rest of their career.
It's about self-care.
Yeah.
Very much about self-care. But also applying intelligence to everything that's happening in the classroom. The most important thing is the intelligence part. It's about thinking things through. It's about understanding what's happening and making strategic decisions on how to react to something. To get a bit technical for a minute,
please do.
When something happens and you react to it, there are 3 stages of reaction. The first one is what you do. Like something's coming at you, it's flying at you, you knock it out of the way. That is an instinctive behavior. It's also shaped by your training. So some people will knock it out of the way, just like, oh, get off. And other people will sort of knock it out of the way like a tennis player and hit it in the back corner, right? It depends on your training there, but that's your first instinctive reaction. The second is your unplanned action. Your unplanned action is not given much thought. It's the thing that you do. When you're early in your career, things that you do will be shaped by the things that you've done in the past, by your learning. And we see young people, young teachers in the classroom making really simple errors, and you just think, oh no, you're going to be paying for that for weeks. But no one's taught them that yet. My job is to make sure they can recognize those things happening and not make those mistakes. The third one is your planned action. And this is where the intelligence comes in. It's when you understand what's happening, you take some breathing time and you make a planned action. Your planned action is the one that works best. That's emotional intelligence. The first is an emotional instinctive reaction. The second is your unplanned action. The third one is the planned strategic action that produces the best outcomes.
And in an
so
ideal
my job
world,
is to help you
yeah,
not make the in an ideal world. I'd love to get teachers early, when they're beginning, and prepare them and get them ready so that they don't have to get stressed, and build a bit of resilience and show them how to tackle those situations in the class. You can't stop reacting, but you can control your reaction, and you can avoid your first action being unplanned. So control your reaction by being prepared, and then make planned action. There's some things you have to do. So if someone is doing something ridiculous in the classroom, it's a dangerous situation, you react, and then you do your unplanned action is resolving the situation, but then you need to put a planned action in place that produces a good outcome from that. You can't do that if you're hysterically running around the classroom screaming. If you lost it and you're just shouting at kids, that's completely out of control. You need to be under control all the time and working in the most planned way you can. That's applying emotional intelligence to your energy that you have.
Yeah, because actually, thinking about it, maybe it's obvious to some people, but the teachers who do the most shouting, generally speaking, are the ones with the most unruly classrooms. So chicken or egg?
Oh, definitely. I don't get shouty. I only get shouty for children who, some kids can't hear unless you're shouting at them. But it's how they communicate at home. It's all they know. You have to catch them with the shout and then apologize to everybody else so that they know that was actually a bad thing to do. And then speak to them in a civilized way. Treat them as if they were civilized, and then they'll catch on. My classrooms are calm and happy places. We have a laugh, we have a giggle, and it's not about toffee. If you want to reduce the number of toffees, just get things that they don't like. I have some toffees that are, humbugs. They don't like humbugs.
No, what humbugs?
They'll say thank you, and they won't want it.
No, I never did like humbugs and Murray mint. Wrong. No.
Well, I mean, usually when I start at a school, I have to use a lot of toffees, and then it very quickly goes down. It starts off with bags and bags, and then it very quickly goes down to just a few every lesson, just to keep it ticking over. And if you turn up at a lesson and there's nothing planned, you just do a quiz with a bag of toffees for the winning team, and believe me, they will fight. They will even talk to kids they don't like to get them into their team to get a bag of toffees. But it really is about understanding how emotion shapes the room. When you walk into a classroom and the kids are on the ceiling, how do you bring them down? How do you do it? You do it by bringing yourself down. You get yourself still and quiet. There are techniques for doing that. And the more of those you've got available to you, and that you express that to the class, and the class will quietly come down. If you stop thinking of emotion in terms of romantic stories and he said, she said, the kids get very much wound up in their emotions, particularly teenagers. They're rocket fueled with hormones. And they get lost in these stories. It's like Coronation Street every day. You just need to get underneath that to the basics of energy. There's 2 dimensions for energy. It's either positive or negative, and it's going to go from low to high. you want to get them down into, if there's events going on, you want them in positive low, which I call set fair. If they're in negative, you've got to get them across to the positive. You're working with energy. You're not working with stories or injustices or morality. You're just dealing with energy. And if you're not in control of your own energy first, you can't deal with the energy of the classroom. But once you learn to deal with energy in that way, everything becomes much simpler.
Right.
When they walk to your classroom smiling because they know it's going to be a sunny day in your classroom, a lot of your problems go away. We all know teachers who children can't wait to get to their lessons, and you walk into that room and it feels lovely because it's the right energy in there. Kids are very, very responsive to that kind of thing, but that takes skill to create. Teaching needs more resourcefulness in personal terms, personal resources, personal resilience, excellent personal learning skills, the ability to process emotionally challenging situations in a structural way that produces good outcomes. We learn these on the job in teaching.
It's very hit and miss, isn't it? Yeah, very hit and miss. Because there'll be insets on behaviour management and classroom management.
Yeah.
But that's the wrong focus then in your
we'll start with the teacher. If you're in control of your energy, then whatever they do, that doesn't matter to you. That's incredibly powerful. That very thing alone, once you've learned how to technically make that switch, is incredibly powerful. And the kids recognize it and they will respect it. It's not about being hostile. It's not about cutting them off. A teacher who doesn't have any passion for kids, I don't want to work with. And there are teachers who don't really care at all about children. And the children know it, and they may object to it, they may not. It depends on whether they're polite to them. I know kids who will accept a teacher who doesn't really care about them, but is polite to them, at least is civil. But I prefer to work with teachers who put some passion into it, who care. But if you're going to be that kind of teacher, you need to be able to self-protect, because without protection for yourself, then you become vulnerable to just putting too much pressure on yourself, to allowing pressure to be put on you from management, from allowing pressure to be put onto you from children. So you need to be able to do the thinking behind that. And you need someone to teach you the thinking. The mentorship. I was given a mentor when I started teaching. And frankly, she was very smart. Some of the things she taught me, she had come from business, not from teaching. And the things she taught me from business were immensely useful to me. She taught me the meaning of cover your arse. Every teacher needs to know that one. But she taught me business strategy that was really helpful in the classroom. But she didn't teach me the personal skills to survive in a classroom. And I don't think she's in teaching herself now.
No.
I think she's left teaching. So it's the nuts and bolts of being a teacher internally. Our focus is so much outside us, all the things we have to do all of the time, constantly catching up on marking, doing the admin, making phone calls to parents. But we have to make time during the day to turn inside and deal with what's inside. We need to make sure, particularly if you're going into a classroom, you need to set the gauges inside so that you walk into that classroom in the right mode. Because how you walk in is going to shape what they do. They're going to be reacting to you.
So let's look at the three scenarios then. So if a teacher comes to you who's doing okay, fine, coping, reasonably early in their career, but they look around them and they look at their colleagues, older, time-served colleagues, and think, I don't want to go down that path emotionally, mentally, psychologically. And so they come to you. How does your training make sure that they maintain their current state of emotional equilibrium?
Yeah, well, I would recognize if they're coming to me with an actual problem, we'll deal with the problem. But if they're just coming to me because they want to develop, then I would recommend that they do basic training first. And basic training takes 3 hours basically. The first one, I just teach them how to manage an emotion in the moment. You know, if you're feeling a drive state, you're in a classroom and you're in a drive state, I teach you how to go in and deal with the drive state, put yourself into a state of peace. And then, you know, let the kids see that. And you need to be in control of that. And that is really the most basic thing that I teach, is how to be in control of your own engine all of the time.
Right.
Most of the time we're on autopilot. And autopilot's fine if nothing's happening. But if something's happening, then we need to take control of the engine. You know, it's like, don't talk to me now, we're driving. You know, I'm approaching the lights, don't talk. You know, you have to step inside and take control. So that's the first thing, to understand what emotion is and to know how to manage it. The second one is how to go back to situations that you haven't dealt with in the past and resolve them. And that is basically going through the adult learning cycle, which is based on learning from experience, processing the emotional information, processing the other information, coming out with an outcome. So how to go and do that. And I teach that because some people's past situations are quite scary. I do it with games, play games. That's called toad hunting. You go and get the toad and we sort the toad out. And then once all of the pain has been washed away, then we deal with the issue and come up with the answer. Let's find a positive answer from that situation. Learning. And then the third session is all about setting the boundaries, laying out, literally mapping out responsibilities, where the boundaries have to be, what kind of boundaries they have to be, and your responsibility yourself is really important there. Looking after yourself, protecting yourself professionally. Right. And with those three, that basic training is enough. Most people don't need more than that for life. That would get them through life. But when in teaching, it's so much more demanding than that. You know, our lives are incredibly emotionally demanding. We're dealing with a very vulnerable population. You know, youngsters are vulnerable. They are not in control of their own emotions. They live in an emotional soup of hormones, and we have to deal with them. We have to help them. We have to teach them. We're also dealing with, on the other side, the business end, staff and management, also under immense pressure, the constant pressure in school for performance, for doing too much work with too little time. You know, we need to be able to protect ourselves in that environment, keep ourselves safe. And that can be ongoing. People can come to me for supervision independently. The school needn't know anything about it. No one needs to know. This is completely private. The teachers get a reduced rate. It's completely private, and I would help them to learn skills that will enable them to deal with the things that come up. And we just use the learning cycle. We go through the learning cycle, and I use something called the 7-eyed system of supervision, which is looking at different aspects of the situation. We might look at the system. We might look at individual child relationship, or but always we deal with the emotion first, get rid of the emotion first, and then deal with the thinking things through.
So if 3 and a bit years ago, 4 years ago, I'd come to you and said, right, I've just walked out of school, had a panic attack, can't do it, can't stand in front of a lesson anymore. What do I do? How would you have helped me at that point?
Train you. Immediately train you. Show you. You don't know where the controls of your engine are. I'm going to show you where they are, and I'm going to enable you to drive. It's like a driving lesson. It's exactly like a driving lesson. I called it a driving lesson. I show you where your engine is, and I teach you to put you in control of it. And we practice it several times until you can do it easily. And that alone can transform people's experiences. Because once they know where the engine is, and then do you know what they say? And I said it myself. How could I be 39 and no one have told me this? How could I be that old and no one have told me this? And I knew that if my mother had known, she would have told me. But in our culture, we don't teach it. In other cultures, they do. But they have a different understanding of emotion from us. They have a better understanding of emotion. We have to change our understanding of emotion, and we have to learn where the techniques and tricks of managing your own body. That's what it is, managing your own body and mind. So I would just sit you down, and I would say, if you are seriously in trouble, I would want to refer you to a therapist. I've got wonderful connections online with therapists who I would trust to hand you over to.
Because let's just say at this point, what you offer is not therapy, isn't it?
And I'm not a therapist, no.
I know sometimes in your LinkedIn posts, you'll say, when you're talking about emotional intelligence training, you'll say, I don't need to know all the minutiae of what is going on. You don't need to tell me any of that.
No.
And you'd
I'm
often
just teaching you
not hear
to
it.
be the best you can be. Yeah, I want you to be as skilled at learning as you possibly can. And learning includes processing emotion information. When your body responds really strongly to a threat or to it can be something pleasurable. It can be that a child offers us something so rewarding that we know that if we accepted it, it would actually be compromising. That we have to be careful. We're dealing with children, can be incredibly manipulative in the nicest possible way. They don't mean to be nasty. They're just trying to be nice. They're trying to make friends with you. And we have to recognize the boundary there, because we're not their friend, even though we can become, I've got friends who were my teachers. I've got friends who I taught, but the boundary is there until it's not there, until that changes. So we have to recognize the responses in ourselves and manage them. And when you're in control of those, nobody can pull your chain. Nobody can mess with you. Not the kids, not the parents, not your boss, not the government, because you're in control of your engine and you choose whether you're going to be wound up about that or not. Really, really important lesson to learn. That
is like what the holy grail, really, isn't it, for teachers, being able to not let anybody pull you.
If you can't do that yourself, then you are so vulnerable. You really shouldn't be teaching. Some people are just not fit for teaching. I remember we had a young teacher came to our school, and I went to a girls' grammar school. I mean, we were nice. We were lovely. But my goodness, this woman came in. She was a new teacher. She was being observed for her qualification, and she was so vulnerable. She was like a kitten sitting there, and we were so concerned for her. We were so well behaved. That lesson was stunning. We couldn't have been more supportive of her, because she was so vulnerable. And then she went out of the classroom, and we actually talked about it. We said we shouldn't have done that, because she's going to walk into a classroom as a qualified teacher and they're going to eat her. But she was so vulnerable. And I do know that she didn't stay in teaching, because I have friends who worked in the school, and she didn't stay in teaching. She was too vulnerable. She was too soft. She had no understanding that the world is not really as nice a place as we're raised to believe when we're children. If you're lucky enough to grow up in a family where people have good values and trusting and loving and kind people, then it can be hard learning that not everyone's like that. In teaching, we have to learn that lesson really fast. And you need someone to help you learn those things. If you don't have a good mentor in school, I had teachers around me. My friends taught me to be a teacher. They taught me to protect myself. But I've taught them emotional skills. That was my great pleasure, was to teach my family and my friends. They came on one of my courses, and I taught them emotional skills. So
I think these days, I think the way things are, with all the demands on a teacher's time during the school day, that I certainly noticed the difference before I left. There was no point where you had time to actually sit down and have a cup of coffee or eat your lunch in the company of other people.
Yes,
lunchtime was down to 25 minutes in my school for lunch, and we were on split lunchtime. So the chances of you being anywhere at the same time as anybody else and having the time to interact, non-existent. So it did concern me how the newly qualified teachers and the younger members of staff how they were going to get the support that I had from my department when I started. Because, you know, when I started, we had an hour for lunch. We'd all go to our departmental staff room and we'd sit there and we'd chat and we'd brain dump or we'd vent and we'd have a laugh and we'd joke. And then we'd go back out to the afternoon with a smile on our faces. That just, logistically, that just doesn't happen anymore. And I do worry that younger members of staff will really suffer for that.
Yeah.
They
You know what they end up doing? They end up talking to me.
Well, exactly. So this is where
I've helped so many of them. It is a problem. It's a matter of a teacher doesn't need to know just how to mark a book, how to, you know, run the system, how to do detentions. They need to know how to be a teacher successfully. And they've taken away all of the opportunities for learning that. And I have to say, this is a political point. I realize that there are people who would be really cross that I say it, but I think it suits them in some ways not to let teachers spend too much time together. You know, I always say that when teachers stop talking, you're in trouble. You know, when teachers are talking and moaning and complaining and having events, then you're fine. It's when they stop talking, you're in trouble, because they've stopped talking because they're thinking, right? And they're planning and they're going to leave. And I've said that so many times to so many managers, and they don't want to know that because it's true.
Right. Yeah.
If you want to keep your teachers around, you need to give them time to dump. If you're not going to do that in school time, there needs to be time outside school time where you can arrange that, where you can facilitate that. But you and I know that, you know, admitting you've got a problem in school can put you in a difficult position. You need someone who really, I had friends who could help me to walk through things, and experienced teachers who could tell me the things that I needed to know. But I mean, I don't know who else you'd go to learn those things.
No.
I mean, that's why you can come to me independently. I also have occasionally done a much cheaper offer for. In fact, I've taught young teachers for nothing, simply because they were good teachers. You know, they were good teachers, and they deserved to be in school, and I wanted them to stay in the profession. And didn't charge at all, but don't tell anyone that because everybody will want. But you know, everyone needs that preparation in every business. But who teaches that? If we don't put a priority on teaching the soft skills, you know, we talk about the need for soft skills in management, but the need for soft skills in every profession is important. And you learn those from experienced people, from people who know and who can share with you and show you where you're going. And if you're not going to provide that in school, then you're going to have to provide it in some way if you want teachers to develop the skills that they need. But it's so hit and miss, isn't it? I mean, if you're in a school in a toxic environment, you know, toxic environments really are based on the bullying model of the hierarchy, where the people at the bottom kept at the bottom. And in some schools, I mean, I've had teachers say to me, you know, the children are more important than we are. You know, we're the bottom of the pile. And if teachers feel that way, then, you know, what chance have they got for enjoying and fulfilling themselves in their role?
And staying in the role as good teachers. Yeah.
Well, why should they? If there's so little commitment to them, why should they be committed to the profession?
Yeah. So is it feasible? I mean, I know the answer is yes, but that somebody could come out of teaching, have a break, have the therapy, have training with you alongside the therapy, and then go back into teaching?
Yeah. Yes, I do, if they want to. They just need to have those boundaries in place. They need to know how to care for themselves. I know how difficult it is. I've slept through the night dreaming of teaching. Many times.
Those dreams. Yeah.
But you need to learn how to switch off your body. If you can't achieve true rest, your body cannot heal. That's why you end up with your hair falling out and your nails breaking, because your body is not able to heal. You're going to age yourself. Have you ever seen someone who's come out of teaching, who you meet them 5 years later and they look as if they're born again?
Nobody ever looks worse, do they? I know.
Yeah.
Nobody looks worse.
You look at them and say, my God, has she had a facelift?
I used to think this whenever I bumped into any ex-staff, and I'd think, my God, you look fantastic.
Yeah.
None of them you ever thought, oh God, you've gone off since you left. None. And now people are saying to me, oh, you look really well.
Yeah. That's because you're never resting. You're literally, your biology is burning out. It's not just your mind that burns out, your whole biology. You stop, your gut linings don't get properly relined, your teeth are at risk. Every part of you is at risk. And in teaching, we tend to put a huge pressure on the development of our brains. The neurons, our computer is working flat out all the time, but the body that's carrying it is completely neglected. I worked at a school where they decided, someone suggested we had yoga on a Friday evening, and so we all turned up to yoga with our mats and laid down on the floor. Half of us were falling asleep before we even started.
Oh God. Yeah, in my last year they'd put a mindfulness course after school once a week, and when we were doing the body scan, it was just snores. And the instructor would say, try not to fall asleep.
Yeah. That's how exhausting teaching is. That's after you've been to the loo. When the kids have gone, first you go to the loo and then you go and fall asleep somewhere. But we were so physically unfit. The yoga teacher was despairing. Some of us couldn't even do a bridge or nothing. We couldn't move our bodies. And she taught us how to stand up properly, because we'd all got teacher stance. We had to re-educate our feet to hold us. We all had to straighten our backs and breathe properly, and it took a long time. And in the end, people were dropping out simply because they couldn't cope with which was a terrible shame, because it was doing us a lot of good.
Yeah.
But she used to despair. She'd just say, my gosh, what have you done to yourselves? You're in such a state.
But it's always the first thing that, on the list of priorities, the first thing that's, you can start the school year saying, this year I am going to do some exercise at least X number of times a week.
First thing that goes.
Looking after yourself.
The only way I ever managed to keep it up was to get out of bed and fall onto my exercise bike for high intensity training. That's the only way I managed to do it. And fortunately, high intensity training does you a lot of good. But even then, it didn't stop me from becoming sick. And the people that I know who had the same illness as me recovered. I was the one who didn't recover. I was the one who couldn't fight it off. And so self-care. It's about self-care, self-protection, and it's about accelerating your ability to learn by processing information really, really well. It's understanding what emotional reactions are and processing them first, and then analyzing the situation that you're in and understanding the best way to get the best outcomes possible. That's the intelligence part. Yeah. We've got an awful lot of people who are completely emotionally illiterate. They don't even know what their emotions are. They can't recognize emotions. Men even more than women, because men aren't even supposed to have them. In our culture, men are at a severe disadvantage, because not only are they not being taught how to manage them, they're not even supposed to acknowledge them, because it's not manly, and it's nonsense, and it puts them at a massive disadvantage. So teaching people a more practical and a more healthy understanding of what an emotion is, and equipping them with techniques that they can manage their emotions in a practical and positive way, and then helping them to learn by processing. It's all about learning to think. I spoke to someone once who, she said, I went on an emotional training course. It was wonderful. Do you do the one with the scarves? And they'd done an exercise of dancing around with scarves. Can you imagine going into a school and asking male staff to dance around with a scarf? I'm sorry, no, I don't do that. For me, it's very technical. It's very scientific, and it's all about recognizing what your body is doing, understanding your biology, understanding your nervous system, and being in control of it. Because we have the ability to override our natural instincts and use intelligence to create what we want rather than what we just end up with.
Yeah.
And my job is to make sure that a teacher has the means to do all of those things, to protect themselves in the short term, in the long term, to analyze, to learn from their own experience, from their own practice. Reflective practice is difficult if you're emotionally charged. You need to clear the emotion and then learn from reflection. And it makes you a stronger, better teacher, where you can enjoy your teaching rather than surviving it.
Yeah. Or also, if you've chosen to get out.
Yeah. If you get out,
help you to cope with.
Yeah. And process some of those really painful things, you know, to go back and be able to process those painful things and put them behind you. You know, if it's covered in pain, we tend to avoid it.
Yeah.
We need to put that behind us and just get on with life and enjoy life.
Thank you so much, Helen. That's been really interesting, and I hope it's given people an insight into what you do and how you can help people and where they can go for that help if they need it. I'll put it in the show notes, but tell us your website address.
I'm actually in the process of rewriting it, but it's campbelleducation.co.uk.
Great.
If people contact me through LinkedIn, just buzz me and, you know, we can have a chat if they want to. But yes, it's a work in progress at the moment. I'm rewriting it, but it will be there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Helen.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity to tell people.